Have you ever stopped to think that everything you know about the history of time might be a big lie? What if I told you that, thousands of years before Europe even imagined what a compass was, wise Africans were already mapping galaxies with a precision that rivals today's computers? Why do school textbooks hide the fact that humanity's first clock and calendar were born in the black heart of Africa? Today, we're going to open the vault of forbidden secrets of ancient astronomy and discover how a people forgotten by official history were, in fact, the architects of the time that governs your life right now. This is not just a story about stones and stars. It's a spiritual revelation that will change how you see our species' past and the power that runs through your veins. Prepare for a journey among star gods, lost civilizations in the desert, and a soul technology that the modern world has tried unsuccessfully to erase. Before we delve into this forgotten prophecy, I invite you to become a guardian of this knowledge with me. If you feel the truth deserves to be revealed, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment below from which part of this immense world you are listening to this ancient story. Your presence here is a sign that the time of awakening has finally arrived. Long before writing touched papyrus, the African sky was the only open book for those who knew how to read the infinite. In the vast silence of what we now call Nabta Playa, the wind whispered secrets about a humanity that not only survived, but understood the cosmos. The desert, once green and vibrant, served as a stage for observers who lacked telescopes, but possessed a vision that reached the divine. There, under the cloak of a purely black night, the first wise men began to notice that the stars did not dance by chance. The sand held the warmth of a sun that dictated the rules of existence, while the moon governed the rhythm of each being's inner tides. Geographically, this point in southern Egypt was the epicenter of a silent revolution, where time itself had no name but already had owners. Those ancestral peoples understood that the earth and the sky were a single body, connected by invisible threads of energy and light. Each constellation that appeared on the horizon was received as a deity returning from a long journey to advise its children. The tools used to measure the universe were rough stones, but imbued with an intention that made them more precise than modern steel. They observed the inclination of light and the shadow cast on the ground with a patience that modernity will never be able to fully replicate. For these observers, space was not an empty vacuum, but an ocean of wisdom where each luminous point told a story of origin. The stage was set for the world's first clock to be carved, not from metal, but from the very soul of the earth. It was a time when man did not see himself as separate from nature, but as a conscious extension of the cycles of life and death. The African savanna was not just a home, it was a colossal observatory where the destiny of the human species was being traced between the furrows of the rocks. The mystery began to unfold when the stones, silent and heavy, began to be moved by a force that went beyond muscle. Something grand was being erected, a map that would link the destiny of men to the eternal movement of distant galaxies. What these architects of time saw in the depths of space would forever change how we understand our own duration in this world. They weren't just counting days. They were deciphering the Creator's language expressed in geometric patterns and shimmering lights. The alignment of the rocks was no geological accident, but a declaration of power and knowledge that defies any simplistic explanation. And as the first stone was positioned to mark the solstice, an even greater secret began to shine in the shadows of the constellations. Deep in the heart of the desert, where the wind carries the breath of forgotten eras, the African sky opened like an ocean of infinite light. Before the first brick of any pyramid was laid, wise nomads already walked through Nabta Playa, their eyes fixed on the ballet of the stars. For them, the horizon was not a limit, but but a portal where sacred time manifested itself through the icy and eternal glow of the constellations. The silence of that ancient savanna, once green and pulsating with life, held the secret of a humanity learning to read the will of the gods in the movement of the cosmos. Suddenly something changed in the way those ancestors perceived existence, and a silent question echoed across the sands. How to predict the return of the life-giving rains? It was in that moment of need and reverence that the mystery began to be deciphered, revealing that the universe possessed a beat, a constant rhythm. They realized that the sky was not just a ceiling, but a living map that guided the cycles of birth and harvest in perfect harmony. That discovery was not just science, it was a spiritual revelation that placed humankind as the interpreter of the great celestial symphony. In this symbolic journey, hands calloused by the sun began to move gigantic rocks, dragging the weight of the earth to mirror the lightness of the stars. Each positioned megalith was a link in an invisible chain, connecting the sacred soil of Africa to the depths of the Milky Way in an eternal embrace. They were not just stones, they were sentinels of quartz and granite, erected with a precision that defies modern understanding and whispers of a technology of the soul. The stone circle of Nabta Playa then became the first altar where mathematics and prayer became a single voice. The unfolding of this knowledge transformed nomads into masters of destiny, capable of anticipating the future by observing the alignment of the sun with the cracks in the rocks. By marking the summer solstice, they were not merely measuring a day, but celebrating the mystical union between the Creator and creation through light. African spirituality flourished in the understanding that we are all stardust, subject to the laws of an invisible clock that governs from the seed to the galaxies. Each shadow cast on the ground was a sacred code, a divine message that only the initiated could clearly translate. But while the stones were being fixed for eternity, an even deeper secret began to emerge from the cracks in the monument. They knew that time was not a straight line lost in the void, but a cycle that always returns to its point of origin. What these early astronomers discovered about the precision of the stars was so advanced that even today, the compasses of our history seem lost. The perfect alignment of these rocks pointed to a place in the sky that held the key to a forgotten lineage, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Just imagine, those immense stones, weighing tons, weren't placed there by chance or the fury of nature. They were positioned with mind-boggling precision, aligned millimetrically with the brilliance of the stars that govern the night. How could a people, thousands of years before any computer, have calculated the Earth's tilt and the dance of the planets with such perfection? There is something sacred and almost forbidden in this geometry. A mathematics that seems to have been whispered directly into the ears of the ancients by forces that do not belong to this world. The mystery deepens when we realize that these megaliths are not just clocks, but mirrors of a cosmic order that modern science is still trying to fully decipher. Each angle, each polished stone face holds a hidden revelation about how space and time bend before the will of those who know the secrets of the sky. Some say that these stones vibrate at a unique frequency, as if they were alive, maintaining a constant dialogue with the constellations they observe from above. It is a direct challenge to everything we have been taught about the primitivism of our ancestors, proving that the African mind already reached the infinite. This journey leads us to understand that building such a monument required more than brute force. It demanded a profound spiritual connection with the very structure of the universe. They saw in geometric forms the signature of the Creator, a symbolic language that united the dust of the earth with the brilliance of Orion. Each circle and each line drawn in the desert served as a conduit for ancestral energy, allowing heaven to descend to earth to walk among men. It was a time when knowledge was not compartmentalized, and astronomy was the purest form of worship and understanding of life. The unfolding of this sacred knowledge allowed these civilizations to flourish amidst the harshness of the sands, transforming the desert into a temple of eternal wisdom. They sought not only to dominate nature, but to resonate with it, following the rhythm of the world's heart. This spiritual understanding brought a peace and order that today seem like a distant dream for humanity, lost in its wristwatches that only know how to run. In those times, time was an ally, a generous divinity that taught the exact moment to plant, to harvest, and to connect with the great mystery. But the truth is that these stones hold a disturbing silence about who, in fact, were the architects behind such genius. Behind each perfect alignment, there is the shadow of enigmatic figures who seem to walk between two worlds at the same time. Who were these guardians of the Zenith who mastered the movement of the stars with the ease of someone telling a story to a child? What did they know about the destiny of the stars that we, with all our technology, have not yet been able to discover? The answer may be hidden in the identity of those who watched over the highest point in the sky. So who were these men and women who, wrapped in cloaks of leather and linen, whispered the secret names of the stars? They were not simply shepherds fleeing the sun, but rather the guardians of the Zenith, a lineage of sages who treated the highest point in the sky as the throne of the Creator himself. Moving with the elegance of those who know every grain of sand, these nomads possessed an authority that emanated not from golden crowns, but from a gaze that pierced the veil of time. They were the living bridge between the African soil and the stellar deities who watched over humanity from above. The great mystery lies in how this knowledge was passed on through songs and rituals that made the very air vibrate with an ancient energy. While the world around them was still awakening to consciousness, these guardians were already mapping the sky with an accuracy that would leave any modern astronomer speechless. They knew that certain stars, upon reaching the top of the celestial vault, opened portals of wisdom and fertility for the people of the earth. There was a silent pact. The sky offered the map, and the guardians offered reverence, maintaining the balance of the entire continent in their hands. In this journey of discovery, we realize that the lives of these wise beings were a continuous dance with the invisible, where each step was guided by the brilliance of Sirius or the position of the Big Dipper. They didn't just look upwards. They felt the gravity of the stars in their own bodies, as if the blood that ran in their veins were made of the same substance as the galaxies. For the guardians of the Zenith, the desert was not a desolate void, but a star map projected onto the ground, where each dune and each rock had a profound and spiritual meaning. They walked through the world with the certainty of those who are never lost, for the stars were their parents and guides. This spiritual understanding brought profound harmony, transforming the observation of the sky into an act of purification and inner power. They understood that human time was merely a small hiccup within the cyclical eternity of the cosmos, and this humility gave them unwavering strength. By mastering the Zenith, they mastered themselves, integrating themselves into the universal laws that govern everything, from the smallest ant to the largest constellation. It was a science of the soul, a spiritual technology that allowed knowledge to be engraved not only in stone, but in the DNA of their descendants. However, these guardians carried a secret that very few dared to mention, something involving a star that the human eye, by itself, should not be able to see. They spoke of an invisible companion to a bright light, knowledge that would only be confirmed by modern science thousands of years later. How did they know of the existence of something hidden in the depths of dark space? This mysterious connection leads us directly to a people who, even today, guard the keys to stellar knowledge that defies the logic of our civilization. Imagine a people who, without telescopes or satellites, already knew the deepest secrets of Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. The Dogon, in the heart of Mali, have guarded for millennia the story of Sirius B, a companion star so small and dense that it is invisible to the naked eye. How did they know of the existence of this seed star, made of a metal so heavy that all the men on Earth could not lift a piece of it? This knowledge is not just an astronomical guess, it is a spiritual heritage that affirms that life did not begin here, but came from the deep waters of space. The mystery becomes almost frightening when modern science, with all its technology, has confirmed exactly what the Dogon elders sang in their ancestral rituals. They described the elliptical orbit of this invisible star with a precision that defies any rational explanation of humanity's past. For the Dogon, Sirius is not just a point of light, but the center of a system that gave rise to the Nommo, divine beings who brought order and wisdom to Earth. This revelation places Africa at the center of a cosmic enigma. Did the ancients have contact with intelligences that came from beyond our sun? In this mystical journey, the masked rituals and sacred dances of the Dogon are not mere performances, but rather moving star maps. Each gesture and each symbol carved in wood tells the story of the creation of the universe and the eternal connection between man and the cosmos. They live in a reality where the spiritual and the astronomical are one and the same, where observing the sky is conversing with the ancestors who inhabit the stars. It is a journey of humility, where the human being recognizes himself as part of a genealogical tree that extends for trillions of kilometers through the vacuum. This profound spirituality reveals that Dogon knowledge is a technology for preserving truth, kept alive through the ages against all forms of oblivion. They believe that the universe is a living organism and that Sirius B is the heart that pumps the energy necessary to keep life pulsating in our system. For them, time is counted not to mark haste, but to honor the cycles of these stellar gods who promise to return one day. This understanding brings a sense of purpose that cold science has never been able to offer, connecting the African heart to the core of galaxies. But Sirius is just one piece of a much older and vaster puzzle that stretches across the continent, from Mali to the southernmost tip of Africa. While the Dogon gazed at Sirius, other peoples long before them had already left permanent marks on the land, creating monuments that seem to be the ancestors of all human constructions. Down south, there is a place where the stones form a calendar so ancient that it makes the pyramids seem like constructions of yesterday. What are these millennia-old rocks trying to tell us about the true age of our civilization? In the far south of the continent, in Mpumalanga, lie stones that seem to have been placed there by the hands of time itself. The so-called Adam's calendar is a stone structure that defies everything textbooks teach us about the beginning of civilization. While we are told that history began only a few millennia ago, these rocks suggest a count that surpasses 75,000 years of existence. It is as if Africa holds humanity's first clock, a jewel of rough stone that marks the pulse of the earth since man took his first conscious steps under the sun. The mystery surrounding this place is enough to send shivers down the spine of even the most skeptical researcher's spine, as the alignments there are no coincidence. The stones were positioned to mark the solstices and equinoxes with an accuracy that could only be achieved by someone who mastered astronomy. Studies indicate that the site functions as a perfect astronomical observatory, directly connected to the movement of constellations from thousands of years ago. How is it possible that, in an era we call primitive, there already existed architects capable of reading the sky with such mathematical and spiritual perfection? Walking among these monuments, one feels as if inside an open-air cathedral, where each rock is a pillar of forgotten wisdom. This journey leads us to realize that South Africa was the cradle of a technology that united geology with the sacred, creating a terrestrial map of what was happening up there. They weren't just measuring time, they were creating a meeting point between the human and the divine, a place where the eternity of the stones conversed with the ephemerality of life. It was the birth of social organization, planned agriculture, and above all, the awareness that we are part of something much greater. The spiritual unfolding of this discovery reveals that ancient Africans saw the earth as a living being, needing to be in tune with the rhythms of the universe to thrive. Adam's calendar was not merely a scientific tool, but a heart of stone that pumped order into the lives of the tribes, ensuring that rituals were performed at the moment when the celestial portals were open. This ancestral knowledge shows that spirituality and science were never enemies, but rather two wings of the same bird flying towards truth. For them, ignoring time was ignoring the very voice of the Creator manifested in the movement of the stars. However, the geometry of these stones reveals an even more intriguing secret, one that seems to connect this place directly to the most distant stars in the north. When we look at the arrangement of these rocks from an aerial perspective, we realize that they form designs that are repeated in other great civilizations around the world. It's as if there were a universal architectural blueprint, a geometry of the divine that was first written on African soil and then copied by the rest of the planet. And it is precisely in these circular and precise forms that we discover how the ancients mirrored the most powerful constellations in our sky. Looking down from above, what we see on African soil is a perfect mirror of the tapestry that God wove in the firmament. These civilizations didn't scatter stones to the wind. They drew entire constellations on the ground, creating an earthly replica of Orion and the Big Dipper with breathtaking precision. Each stone circle was like a sacred seal, a geometry of the divine that proved that the human mind and the laws of the universe spoke the very same language. For those ancestors, the earth was not a place separate from the sky, but a dense and palpable reflection of the eternal light that shines above. The great mystery is how they managed to maintain this golden ratio and perfect symmetry on such a gigantic scale, without airplanes or modern maps. There is a hidden wisdom in these forms, a mathematical code that suggests the universe possesses an intelligent architecture, and that Africans were the first to receive the blueprint for this work. Each stone positioned in relation to the other created an energy field, a point where time and space seemed to merge to reveal the truth about our origin. It is an affront to common logic to think that all this was done only with ropes and goodwill, without superior knowledge. In this visual journey, we are invited to see that the symmetry of these constructions was the basis for a life in balance with the whole. They understood that if the city or temple was in harmony with the stars, peace and abundance would flow like the waters of a generous river. The circles had no beginning or end, symbolizing the eternity of the spirit and the constant return of all things to the heart of creation. Walking through these alignments, the initiate felt that their feet touched the dust, but their soul was seated among the galaxies, in a communion that modernity has forgotten. The unfolding of this knowledge reveals that African sacred geometry is the mother of all sciences that came after, from architecture to spiritual medicine. They knew that certain forms could heal, raise consciousness, and protect the community against the shadows of chaos and disorder. Using the measurements of the stars to build on Earth was an act of humility and, at the same time, of indescribable power, for it placed humankind in tune with the vibration of the Creator himself. For them, being intelligent meant being able to imitate the perfection of nature, following the lines that sunlight traced on the horizon. However, all this mathematical precision and visual beauty wasn't just for the intellect, it was the stage for something far more vibrant and exciting. When the alignment of the stones met the exact sunlight on a specific day of the year, the desert silence was broken by a roar of life and faith. It was the moment when science gave way to ecstasy, and geometry became the setting for an event that changed the destiny of the entire people. What happened when the light pierced the heart of the monument on the longest day of the year was a secret that few could witness without being transformed. When the sun reached its highest point, a reverent silence fell over the sands, for everyone knew that the sky was about to kiss the earth. The solstice ritual was not just a date on the calendar, but a moment of spiritual explosion, where the light of the Creator was captured by the cracks in the sacred stones. Imagine the golden glow piercing the granite portals at exactly noon, illuminating altars that had been shrouded in shadow all year. It was the rebirth of hope, a confirmation that the gods still walked among their African children, dictating the rhythm of life and abundance. The mystery of this celebration lay in its absolute precision. If the stone were even slightly off, the magic would be lost, and the connection with the divine would be interrupted. Priests and sages watched the ray of sunlight as if it were a fiery arrow descending from the heights to fertilize the soil and the minds of those present. At that instant, time stood still, and the boundary between the visible and the invisible world became as thin as a spider's web. It was a direct revelation that light is the source of all truth, and that the African man possessed the key to attracting this light to the heart of his community. In this ecstatic journey, the sound of drums began to echo, beating in the same rhythm as the pulse of the earth and the brilliance of the stars. People danced in circles that mimicked the movement of the planets, losing all sense of their own individuality to become part of a single cosmic organism. The scent of burning herbs and the heat of the sun created an atmosphere where the past, present, and future merged into a single vision of power and glory. They were not merely celebrating the warmth, they were reaffirming their alliance with the universal laws that guarantee that after the longest night, the light will always return. The unfolding of this ritual brought a spiritual clarity that guided the leaders and the people during the following months of work and harvest. They understood that the solstice was the moment to align their own souls with the righteousness of the stones, leaving behind the shadows of doubt and internal conflict. It was a technology of collective healing where sunlight acted as a remedy for the spirit, renewing the energies of all who dared to look upwards with faith. Those who participated in this moment left with the certainty that Africa was the vibrant center of a universe that cares for each of its details. But while the sun shone brightly on the stone temples, other records of ancestral intelligence were being engraved more intimately in small objects that fit in the palm of a hand. Far from the noise of the festivities, in silent caves, African man was already transforming thought into numbers and lunar cycles. There is a small, mysterious object that proves that mathematics was born in Africa long before any other civilization dreamed of counting on its fingers. And this small bone, etched with surgical precision, holds the secret of how the human mind began to master the logic of time. Far from the grand monuments, in the silence of a cave in the Congolo Mountains, a secret small enough to be held in one's hand changed history forever. The Ashango bone, a quartz tool embedded in a baboon fibula, bears markings that are not mere scribbles of a bored hunter. Those carvings are in fact the birth certificate of human mathematics and astronomy, proving that logic was born on African soil more than 20,000 years ago. It is an object that screams the truth. Before any calculator, the people of Congo were already deciphering the rhythms of the universe. The mystery that intrigues scientists to this day is the hidden complexity within those fine, precise lines that seem to follow an absolute logical order. It's not just about counting prey or hides, The groupings suggest knowledge of prime numbers and, even more impressively, a detailed lunar calendar. How is it possible that, in the Stone Age, an African mind already possessed the necessary abstraction to organize time into mathematical cycles? There is something almost supernatural about those markings, as if the knowledge were being dictated by the very pulse of the moon on the river's waters. On this journey of discovery, we realized that the Ashango bone was humanity's first computer, a powerful tool that gave its owner dominion over the future. By predicting the lunar phases, the ancients knew exactly when the tides would change and when the Earth's fertility would be at its peak. It wasn't just about survival. It was an intimate conversation with the Great Mother, where numbers were the words used to understand the desires of nature. Each scratch on the bone represented a night of vigil, a link connecting human intellect to the cyclical movement of the celestial spheres. The spiritual unfolding of this discovery reveals that, for ancient Africans, mathematics was a form of prayer, a way to find order in the chaos of the world. They understood that numbers were the notes of a divine music that governed both the birth of a child and the movement of the stars. Having knowledge of lunar cycles engraved on a bone was like carrying the compass of creation, allowing the tribe to walk in harmony with the invisible laws of existence. It was proof that African intelligence always sought the union between exact precision and the depth of the soul. But these scratches on the bone were only the beginning of a visual language that would become increasingly complex and laden with hidden meanings. As time progressed, the wise men began to engrave their secrets on even more resistant materials, creating symbols that could be read by those who knew the codes of light. These graphic designs, carved in quartz and sacred rocks, concealed mysteries about fertility and human destiny that only the initiated could see. And it is in these silent symbols that we find the key to understanding how the African man read his own soul through the stars. On the icy, translucent surfaces of quartz, the ancient masters did not merely draw, they captured light to tell the story of the soul. These symbols etched into the stones were not mere ornaments, but an alphabet of power that united the menstrual cycle of women with the eternal cycle of the moon in the sky. Imagine the brilliance of a crystal being used to reflect the exact position of a star, while skilled hands carved the record of a harvest yet to come. Each graphic was a seal of protection and a promise that the knowledge of the heavens would never be erased by rain or time. The mystery lies in the fact that these symbols possess a geometry that seems to vibrate when sunlight hits them at specific angles. Some researchers believe that these designs conceal star maps so complex that they could only be understood by those who master the relationship between sound and form. There was a belief that, by touching a symbol engraved in quartz during the apex of a constellation, the initiate could receive visions about the destiny of their lineage. It was a science of the image, where each stroke functioned as an antenna directly connected to the energies that govern the fertility of the earth and the human spirit. In this journey of meanings, we understand that quartz was chosen for its ability to store memory, something that modern technology would only use in computer chips millennia later. For ancient Africans, the stone was not something dead, but a conscious being that recorded the prayers and mathematical calculations of the priests. They created a network of information spread throughout caves and temples, ensuring that knowledge about fertile cycles was available to those who knew how to decipher the code. It was the birth of symbolic writing, a language that spoke to the unconscious and the cosmos at the same time. The spiritual unfolding of this practice brought profound security to the communities, who felt supported by the signs that their ancestors left on the rocks. They saw in these symbols proof that human life was a mirror of divine life, and that each birth on earth was celebrated by a star in the sky. It was believed that by engraving the symbol of a constellation on the body or on a stone, The person became protected by the force of that star, living in a state of grace and permanent harmony. It was a visual spirituality where the beauty of form was the shortest path to finding the truth of the Creator. But all this wisdom encoded in quartz and bones did not remain isolated in deserts and caves. It flowed like water toward the great northern valley. The knowledge accumulated by these first astronomers of the Sahara served as the foundation for one of the greatest glories the world has ever seen on the banks of a sacred river. What began as stone circles and markings on crystals was about to transform into pyramids that would touch the clouds and temples that would defy eternity. The Nile River was calling, ready to receive the legacy of those who first mastered time. As the sands of the Sahara advanced, the ancient sages carried with them the secret of the stars to the fertile banks of the great Nile River. What many call the Egyptian miracle was, in fact, the blossoming of a seed planted millennia before by the astronomers of the desert. Kemet, the Black Land, did not spring from nothing. It was built on the shoulders of giants who already knew how to align stones with the heart of the sky. Each pyramid and each temple that we admire today is a sophisticated echo of those first stone circles that marked time in the silence of the savannah. The mystery that official history often ignores is the direct and undeniable connection between the astronomy of Nabta Playa and the sacred architecture of the pharaohs. The same constellations that guided the nomads became the gods of Egypt, transforming the map of the sky into a compass for true eternity. Hidden legends say that the first priests of the Nile were direct descendants of the guardians of the Zenith, carrying papyrus scrolls containing celestial calculations made eons before the first dynasty. This transfer of knowledge proves that Africa has always been a living organism, where knowledge flowed like blood, fueling the progress of all humanity. On this journey through the Nile Valley, we realize that the Egyptian solar calendar of 365 days is the legitimate offspring of lunar and stellar observations made in the heart of the continent. The temples were not merely buildings, but monumental observatories designed to capture the exact moment when Sirius appeared on the horizon, announcing the river's flooding. It was a science of survival, dressed in the garb of divinity, where the pharaoh acted as the master of time to ensure that order triumphed over chaos. The Nile became a terrestrial mirror of the Milky Way, a masterpiece of engineering that united geography with the astral destiny of an entire people. The spiritual unfolding of this connection brought about a golden age where humanity believed it could achieve immortality through knowledge of cycles. They understood that by building on earth according to the measurements of the heavens, they created an indestructible link that allowed the soul to travel between worlds. African spirituality in Egypt was an exact science, where each prayer had a mathematical weight and each ritual was timed by the position of the planets. This harmony allowed a civilization to last for millennia, proving that the secret to longevity lies in never losing step with the rhythm of the universe. But as this glory expanded, a shadow began to grow on the horizon of the human mind, a division that would separate the sacred from pure logic. What was once a perfect union between the science of heaven and the faith of the heart began to be seen as a threat by those who wanted to control the world. A silent conflict between intuitive faith and cold science was about to change how man perceives the divine. Heaven, which was once the loving father and counselor, was about to become a battlefield for the soul of humanity. There was a time when there was no separation between the laboratory and the altar, for understanding the stars was the highest form of communication with God. For the African sage, calculating a planet's orbit was an act of extreme devotion, a science that sought not only numbers, but the vibration of the world's soul. They did not see the sky as a cold and indifferent vacuum, but as an ocean of consciousness where each point of light was an ancestor or a deity whispering guidance. Faith was not blind. It had eyes that saw, through mathematical calculations, the signature of a superior intelligence in each eclipse. The great conflict began when pure logic attempted to detach itself from mystery, creating a wound in the heart of humanity that has not healed to this day. While ancient science sought integration, new ways of thinking began to treat the universe as a dead machine, devoid of spirit and sacred purpose. This clash was not merely intellectual. It was a spiritual battle to decide whether humankind would remain a child of the stars or simply a master of its gears. Those who guarded the unified vision were persecuted, for their wisdom gave people a freedom that the new powers of Earth could not control. In this journey of resistance, ancient astronomers concealed their formulas within metaphors and myths, protecting the sacred core of knowledge against the coldness of materialism. They knew that a science without a soul is like a lifeless body, capable of measuring the world, but incapable of giving meaning to human existence. The spiritual conflict forced the initiates to become shadows, silently guarding the truth that the sky and the human heart beat in the same rhythm. Africa became the vault of this secret, keeping alive the flame that technical knowledge must always walk hand in hand with reverence for the invisible. The unfolding of this conflict shaped the religions and philosophies we know today, often filtered through a lens that separated humanity from the cosmos. By losing sight of the fact that astronomy is also a spiritual language, we are orphaned of a greater meaning, trapped in clocks that mark time but do not explain life. However, African spirituality never accepted this division, maintaining in its rituals the certainty that science is the arm of the spirit acting upon matter. This silent resistance is what has allowed the sacred not to be completely devoured by the mechanical logic that attempted to dominate global thought. But this division between what is scientific and what is mystical was no accident. It was the first step in a much larger plan to erase the origin of this power. As empires from outside grew, a curtain of forgetfulness was woven over the intellectual achievements of the African continent, distorting the truth so that the world would forget where the light came from. Official history was about to undergo a great mutation, transforming humanity's teachers into mere extras in its own narrative. And so, the great distortion began to erase the traces of the first masters of time, leaving the world in darkness about its own roots. You know, what we're told in history books often seems like absolute truth, but in reality it's a smokescreen designed to make us forget. For centuries, this great distortion has tried to portray Africa as a place without science, a continent that merely awaited external light to illuminate it. But the truth screams in the stones and in the blood. Africa's scientific pioneering was erased by hands that feared the power of a people who already dominated the skies before Europe even awoke. It was a silent and cruel strategy that transformed the inventors of astronomy into mere spectators of official history. The mystery behind this historical lie is the fear that humanity will discover that the compass of civilization has always pointed south. By labeling ancient African astronomers merely as mystics or primitives, the Eurocentric system attempted to steal credit for discoveries that changed the world. Just imagine the impact of admitting that the foundations of mathematics, timekeeping, and navigation were born in the Black Mind long before any other nation. This distortion was not a translation error, but a conscious choice to maintain authority over what is considered progress and what is called legend. In this journey to reclaim the truth, we realize that Africa was the planet's first laboratory, where rigorous observation and the scientific method already flourished among the dunes and savannas. Every time we look at a calendar and see only Greek or Roman names, We are living under the effect of this great collective amnesia that has been imposed upon us. The conflict here is for the mind and for dignity, a struggle to return to our ancestors, the throne of intellect that was stolen from them by the colonization of thought. It takes courage to see through this fog and recognize that the light of reason has always had the colors of African soil. The unfolding of this erasure has generated a world that ignores its own roots, creating generations that believe science is a modern, foreign invention. However, African spirituality and intelligence have endured in the shadows, guarded by lineages that refuse to accept falsehood as their destiny. They knew that truth is like the sun. It may be hidden by clouds for a time, but it always finds a crack to shine again. The legacy of these masters of time survives in the DNA of every current discovery, awaiting the moment when the story will finally be told the right way. But despite all the efforts to bury this knowledge, the stars remain the same, and the ancient paths can still be followed by those with eyes to see. Those who first read the sky didn't use this knowledge only to build temples, but to embark on adventures that official history swears never happened. They were the navigators of the stars, masters at using the celestial map to traverse oceans and cross unimaginable deserts, guided by a light that went far beyond the visible horizon. And it is on these forgotten routes that we discover that Africa was never isolated from the world. Long before metal compasses existed, African sailors already had the map of the universe engraved in the palm of their hands and in the gleam of their eyes. These navigators of the stars did not fear the open sea nor the vastness of the desert, for they knew that each star was a safe and immutable beacon. They read the sky like a roadbook, crossing distances that official history insists were impossible for the time. With courage fueled by astronomical knowledge, they transformed the horizon into a bridge, connecting Africa to distant lands through paths traced by light. The great mystery that challenges ancient maps is the evidence that these navigators reached places that modern science swears were discovered much later. There are ocean currents that act as natural conveyor belts, and the ancient masters of time knew exactly when the stars indicated the right moment to set sail on them. How else to explain the presence of African plants and symbols in civilizations on the other side of the world, if not by an absolute mastery of celestial navigation? It is a truth that remains hidden beneath the waves, whispering that the ocean was never a barrier, but a road for those who know the sky. On this journey across waters and sands, navigation was seen as a sacred act, where the captain was also a priest who interpreted the signs of the cosmos. They understood that the movement of the waves was governed by the same rhythm that moves the moons of Jupiter and the brilliance of Sirius, creating total harmony. Each voyage was a test of faith and intellect, where an error of 1 degree in the observation of a star could mean shipwreck or glory. They sailed with a confidence that came from the certainty that the universe is an organized organism, where no one is lost if they know how to look up. The spiritual unfolding of this mastery brought a worldview where humanity was one, connected by the same stars that shine upon all peoples. The African navigator carried with him not only merchandise, but seeds of wisdom, astronomy, and spirituality that influenced cultures around the globe. They were messengers of time, proving that Africa was the heart of a network of exchanges that pulsed long before modern globalization. This forbidden connection shows that the continent's isolation is just another myth created to diminish the impact of black intelligence on the planet's destiny. But the navigation of these navigators didn't depend solely on sight. There was a frequency, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very movement of the stars. As the boats cut through the waters, the rhythm of the universe was translated into vibrations that the ancients could feel in their skin and spirit. They believed that the cosmos possessed its own music, and that the drums of the earth could resonate with this celestial melody. And it is in this encounter between sound and space that we discover how ancestral music was, in fact, a bridge to attune humanity to the beat of time. You know, have you ever stopped to think that the sound of a drum might actually be a clock beating to the rhythm of the galaxies? For ancient African sages, the universe wasn't silent, but rather an orchestra of frequencies vibrating in perfect harmony with the stars. They understood that each phase of the moon and each planetary alignment emitted an invisible note, and the role of music was to tune the human heart to this cosmic beat. Sound was the tool that transformed the cold mathematics of the sky into a living experience, felt in the skin and soul of the entire community. The mystery behind this music of the spheres is that certain drum rhythms were used to induce states of consciousness that allowed priests to hear the movement of time. It wasn't just a party or celebration, it was a precise sonic technology where the cadence of the beats mimicked the rotation time of specific stars. Legends say that when the right rhythm was achieved during an eclipse or solstice, the barrier between dimensions would break, revealing secrets about the future and the past. It was as if the drum were a radio tuned to the station of eternity, picking up messages that the human voice could not express. In this vibrational journey, the dancers' bodies became the very pendulum of a spiritual clock, moving in sync with the laws of gravity and light. They believed that by dancing to the rhythm of the cosmos, they were cleansing their energies and realigning their destinies with the Creator's greater purpose. Each foot stomp on the dry savanna ground was a sign of reverence, a confirmation that humanity accepted its place within the great celestial symphony. The sound of the cosmos was what maintained social and spiritual order, ensuring that no one forgot that we are made of sound and light. The unfolding of this knowledge shows that African music was never merely entertainment, but a science of universal harmony, seeking total balance. They knew that certain frequencies could heal ailments of the soul and the earth, acting as a balm that restored the lost connection with the heavens. By singing to the stars, they were, in fact, keeping the universe alive within themselves, preserving a wisdom that modern science is only now beginning to understand through the physics of strings. This sonic connection is what allowed the African people to remain resilient, even when time seemed to conspire against them. But this sonic harmony wasn't just in the air. It materialized in the way cities and temples were designed to resonate with the divine. Ancient architecture wasn't merely stone and mortar, but a physical extension of this celestial music, creating spaces that were true sounding boards for the power of the stars. Each wall and each square was built as an earthly replica of a star map, transforming daily life into a continuous ritual. And it is in this setting of living stones that we discover how urban space was, in fact, a mirror of the constellations. Imagine walking through a city where every street and square was designed to be the exact reflection of a constellation shining in the sky. In ancient African civilizations, architecture wasn't a matter of aesthetics, but of pure harmony with the map of the stars above. The ancestral engineers built empires that functioned as earthly mirrors of the universe, where the king's palace and the priest's temple occupied the exact positions of planets and suns. It was as if the city were a living organism, breathing the same rhythm as distant galaxies, transforming the concrete of existence into a sacred stage. The great mystery of these forgotten metropolises is that, seen from above, they reveal geometric designs that only make sense to those looking from space. How could such ancient peoples have designed entire cities following mathematical proportions that would only be discovered by modern science centuries later? There is a theory that these urban spaces were, in fact, gigantic energy machines designed to capture and distribute astral influences to all the people. To live within these cities was to be in constant prayer, For each step taken towards the center was a movement towards the heart of the Milky Way. On this journey through the living stones, we realized that the social organization was based on the order that the ancients saw in the firmament, where each person had their place in the divine plan. The houses were oriented to capture the light of specific stars, ensuring that the sleep and waking of each citizen were protected by a cosmic force. There was no chaos or disorder, for the civilization's floor plan was the very law of the Creator, written in granite, quartz, and rammed earth. It was an architecture of the soul, where the roof of the house was merely a continuation of the infinite sky, keeping the connection between the human and the eternal ever pulsating. The unfolding of this architectural knowledge generated centers of power that lasted for ages, as they were anchored in truths that do not change with the passing of centuries. They knew that if the foundation of a city were laid at the wrong time in the astronomical calendar, it would be doomed to failure and disharmony. Therefore, architects were also elite astronomers who waited for the perfect alignment of Mars or Venus to lay the first stone of a wall. This urban spirituality brought a peace that the modern world does not know, because the environment where people lived was a constant reminder of their stellar origin and their sacred destiny. However, this visual and spiritual perfection wasn't directed solely towards the most well-known stars. There was a special affection for a cluster of light that dictated the rhythm of the harvests. The secret of the Pleiades was what truly moved the hearts of the people. For when these 7 sisters appeared on the horizon, Africa knew it was time to renew life. This small group of stars carried such a profound influence on ancestral spirituality that it changed how civilizations understood abundance. And it is precisely in this subtle brilliance of the Pleiades that we discover how the fertility of the land was governed by hands that come from very far away. You know, there's a small glow in the sky, almost a cloud of diamonds, that the ancient Africans called the 7 Sisters. The Pleiades were not just beautiful lights, but the true clock of the belly and the spirit, dictating the exact moment when the earth should be opened for the seeds. When this cluster of stars appeared on the horizon, the people knew that life was about to be renewed, for their influence was like an invisible command to the waters and the womb. It was such an intimate connection that the agricultural calendar of Africa pulsed to the same rhythm as these distant lights, uniting the destiny of the farmer with the movement of the galaxies. The mystery surrounding the Pleiades in ancestral tradition lies in the belief that they were not merely beacons, but sources of energy that nourished human intelligence. Many peoples, such as the Dogon and the Nubians, believed that the wisdom to cultivate the land and organize society had been breathed forth by beings inhabiting that specific corner of the universe. How is it possible that civilizations so distant from one another across the continent shared the same reverence for this small group of stars? There is a hidden revelation that our physical and spiritual survival depends on an umbilical cord of light that connects us directly to this stellar heart. In this journey of fertility, the rising of the Pleiades was celebrated with rituals that prepared the soul for the abundance to come. They understood that planting was not merely a muscular effort, but an act of faith that required the cosmos's permission for the seed to sprout. The women, in particular, kept secrets about how the light of these stars affected the birth cycle, creating a spirituality of creation that was purely feminine and sacred. Each seed sown was accompanied by a prayer that ascended to the 7 sisters, asking that the order of heaven manifest itself in the abundance of the table and the health of the tribe. The unfolding of this knowledge brought a security that transcended the fear of scarcity or droughts, for the people trusted in the punctuality of divine laws. They knew that, as long as the Pleiades continued their annual dance, Africa would continue to be the generous mother who nourishes her children with wisdom and food. This spirituality linked to the stars shows that ancestral intelligence did not separate biology from astronomy, treating life as a continuous flow of energy that comes from above to the ground. It was a time of absolute harmony, where humankind felt like an honored guest at a banquet prepared by the hands of time and light. But as every great light attracts shadows, this monumental wisdom began to be seen as a danger to those who desired total control over minds. As invaders and conquerors trod upon sacred ground, knowledge of the stars and cycles was the first target of a brutal and planned attack. An era of persecution and concealment was about to begin, where the stone books would be broken and the voices of the wise silenced so that the world would forget their origin. What happened to the guardians of this secret when the darkness of intolerance tried to extinguish the brilliance of the Pleiades in the African mind? When foreign steel touched African soil, the first target was not only the riches of the land, but the treasures that lived in the minds of the wise. Temples that served as observatories were demolished, and the stones that told the story of the universe were scattered as if they were worthless rubble. Those who knew how to read the movement of the stars were called sorcerers, and their scientific knowledge, accumulated over millennia, was buried under the label of superstition and sin. It was a crime against the memory of humanity, a deliberate attempt to blind an entire continent so that it could no longer see its own greatness reflected in the sky. The great mystery that still haunts history is how much of this knowledge was truly lost, and how much was taken to the basements of the conquerors' secret libraries. While burning ancestral records before the people, many invaders secretly collected the star maps and mathematical formulas that Africans already mastered. There is a shadow over the great discoveries of modern science, a suspicion that many of the geniuses of the outside world merely translated what was already written on the stones of Kemet and Zimbabwe. Persecution was the veil used to hide the greatest theft of intellect the world has ever seen, transforming Africa into a desert of knowledge in the eyes of the West. In this journey of pain and resistance, the guardians of time had to make a drastic decision. To save the truth, they needed to hide it within popular culture itself. Astronomical formulas became dance steps, sacred calendars turned into fabric patterns, and the positions of the stars were concealed in children's stories passed down around the campfire. They knew that paper can burn and stone can be broken, but a story alive in the heart of the people is indestructible. This is how African astronomy survived colonialism, disguised as folklore so that the eyes of the oppressors could never identify the danger of that wisdom. The spiritual unfolding of this concealment generated a silent force of resistance that crossed oceans and centuries of slavery. Even chained, those who carried the secret of time knew that their soul remained free, for it belonged to the eternal rhythm of the stars that no man can imprison. Spirituality became the vault where ancestral knowledge was preserved, waiting for a time when descendants would have the courage to look up again. This hidden knowledge is what gave the African people the resilience not to get lost in the darkness, maintaining the certainty that the night is only the preface to a new dawn. But this heritage wasn't confined to the continent. It traveled in the holds of ships, crossed the Atlantic, and spread to every corner where the African diaspora took root. Even far from home, the concept of cyclical time and the connection to the stars continued to pulsate in the traditions we now call religion, but which, at their core, hold a profound science. How did the African star clock survive in the Americas, influencing the faith and identity of millions of people to this day? The mystery of the survival of this knowledge in the diaspora reveals that African DNA carries a stellar map that no distance can erase. Even across the ocean, far from the stones of Nabta Playa and the sacred soil of Mali, the rhythm of the stars continued to beat in the hearts of the children of Africa. In the sacred spaces, at the saints' festivals, and in the drumming circles of the Americas, the linear and cold time of the colonizers never managed to completely dominate the soul of the diaspora. The concept of cyclical time, where the past walks hand in hand with the present, remained alive in every ritual that honors the ancestors. For those who were torn from their land, the stars became the only map back home, a spiritual compass that no chain could break. The mystery lies in how sacred African calendars were secretly reconstructed within Afro-American religions such as Candomblé and Santeria. Many rituals that appear purely devotional are, in fact, timed by the invisible movement of stars that govern nature and the power of the orishas. There is a hidden science in the way time is counted in these traditions, preserving the knowledge that each deity possesses its own stellar cycle and vibrational frequency. It is an invisible clock that dictates the moment to ask for healing, to plant faith and to celebrate life, maintaining the connection with the cosmos pulsating in the asphalt of modern cities. In this journey of survival, ancestral astronomy transformed into a technology of cultural resistance and identity. By keeping alive the notion that life follows the cycles of the moon and the sun, Africans in the diaspora ensured that their worldview was not completely erased by the logic of profit and the time clock. Each celebration that respects the turning of the waters or the position of the sun is an act of intellectual rebellion against the oblivion imposed by slavery. They knew that as long as they knew how to read the sky, they would never be truly slaves, for their heritage was as vast as the Milky Way itself. The spiritual unfolding of this heritage in the diaspora created an invisible protective network that sustains the faith and hope of millions to this day. This ancestral time teaches that pain is temporary and that the return to glory is inevitable, just like the stars that always return to the same position after a long cycle. African spirituality in the modern world is the last bastion of a science that does not separate man from the universe, treating each human being as a constellation in motion. It is a heritage that shines in the eyes of every descendant who, even without knowing how to explain it, feels a sacred shiver when observing the deep sky of a starry night. But what was once kept secret only within temples and in the beat of drums is now beginning to emerge before the eyes of the entire world across the land. New technological tools and excavations in forgotten places are forcing history books to be rewritten at an astonishing speed. What the ancient masters of time always knew is being confirmed by modern radars and satellites, revealing that Africa never lied about its greatness. The return to the ancestors is not just a spiritual desire, but a scientific necessity that is about to change everything we think we know about ourselves. It seems the tables have turned, doesn't it? What was once treated as legend or something for those who have nothing better to do is now leaping from the African soil with a force that no one can contain anymore. Thanks to radar that sees through the earth and satellites that scan the desert, entire cities and monumental astronomical observatories are coming to light, shouting truths that have been buried for millennia. Each new stone discovered is a punch in the gut to that official narrative that tried to convince us that science was born in Europe. Modern archaeologists are being forced to relinquish their pride and acknowledge that ancient Africans already had the answers long before the questions were asked. The mystery now is to understand the extent of this knowledge, as new evidence reveals mathematical connections so complex they challenge even modern computers. We are no longer talking about coincidences. We are talking about a global project of wisdom that profoundly connected the heart of Africa to the rest of the planet. Each stellar alignment rediscovered in the stone ruins proves the existence of a shared information network, a kind of spiritual internet based on light and geometry. It is fascinating and at the same time somewhat frightening to realize that we are only scratching the surface of a power that the modern world has forgotten how to use. In this journey back to our roots, what we are experiencing is a true resurrection of black intelligence on a global scale. Archaeological discoveries are acting as keys that unlock the shackles of our imagination, allowing us to dream again of a future that honors our glorious past. It's not just about looking at old bones and stones, but about recovering the self-esteem of a people who discovered that their great-great-grandparents were the teachers of the world. Feeling this connection with our ancestors through science is like finding a treasure that has been hidden inside our own home all this time. The unfolding of this awakening is changing how new generations see themselves and position themselves in relation to knowledge. In schools and universities, the seed of curiosity has been planted. If they created the first calendar, what else were they able to invent that we don't yet know? This search for ancestral truth brings a renewed spirituality, one that doesn't need dogmas, as it is based on the direct observation of the laws that govern life and the universe. It is a time of historical healing, where silence is replaced by the pride of belonging to a lineage that has always known that the sky is the limit. But this whole story isn't just about what happened thousands of years ago. It's about what you carry right now, on your wrist and in your cell phone. The infinite legacy of those first African astronomers hasn't died. It has simply transformed into the foundation of everything we use today to measure our existence. The watch you consult and the calendar that organizes your life have DNA that was born in the heat of the savannas and the brilliance of the African sky. When you understand this, time ceases to be a running enemy and becomes a sacred companion that connects us directly to eternity. Time, that invisible force we now try to imprison in crystal screens and metal gears, was born from a deep, dark breath beneath the African sky. Every time you look at a calendar to schedule an appointment or check the time so you're not late, you are unknowingly paying silent homage to the masters of Nabta Playa and Ishango. The clock the modern world wears on its wrist is merely the distant echo of an ancestral drum that learned to beat to the rhythm of the stars thousands of years ago. It's not just technology, it's an infinite legacy that proves the human mind awakened to greatness the very moment African man decided the sky would be his mirror. The mystery that remains is how blind we still are to our own origins, living in a world that consumes the fruit but forgets who planted the root. This wisdom is not something that remained stagnant in the past. It is the hidden structure that sustains our science, our navigation, and our way of understanding the place we occupy in the cosmos. There is an indescribable power in knowing that your blood carries the code of those who first mastered the infinite. Africa not only took the first step on Earth, it took the first leap towards the galaxies, leaving a trail of light that no attempt at historical erasure has been able to completely extinguish. In this concluding journey, we realize that time is not a line that separates us from our ancestors, but a circle that always brings us back into their embrace. The spirituality and intelligence that created humanity's first calendar are the same ones that today invite us to question imposed truths and seek our own light. By recognizing that time is sacred, we cease to be slaves to the minutes and become masters of our destiny, just like the guardians who watched over the Zenith. It is a connection that restores our dignity and the certainty that we have never been alone in the vastness of the universe, for the map has always been engraved in our soul. The unfolding of this knowledge calls us to a responsibility to keep the flame of this discovery alive so that future generations do not grow up in the shadow of oblivion. The infinite legacy of African astronomy is an invitation for each of us to look at the sky again with the curiosity of a child and the reverence of an initiate. We don't need grand stone temples to feel this connection. It is enough to silence the noise of the modern world and listen to the constant beat of the universe that pulsates within us. The truth is there, floating between Sirius and the Pleiades, waiting only for us to have the courage to reclaim our stellar heritage. Finally, the revelation remains that official history is just one page of a much larger book, written with the ink of stars and African soil. What the silence of centuries tried to hide, the light of truth is bringing back to the center stage of humanity. We are the heirs of the first masters of time, the children of those who taught the world to count the days and dream of eternity. And as long as the sun continues to rise and the stars to shine, Africa will continue to be the beacon pointing the way for those who wish to discover who we truly are and where we come from. Today's journey comes to an end, but the time our ancestors deciphered is eternal. As we close this chapter on the Lords of the Stars, we invite you to never look at the sky the same way again. The Nabta Playa stones and the Ishango records are not merely relics of a distant past. They are living proof that the light of human intelligence has shone on African soil since the beginning of everything. May this revelation not be just guarded knowledge, but a spark that ignites pride and reverence for the wisdom that has brought us this far. Remember, time is not a prison of minutes and seconds, but a sacred cycle of return and power. Many mysteries still sleep beneath the sands and silence of the centuries, waiting for hearts willing to hear the truth. Honor the stellar blood that runs within you and know that even in the darkest nights, the map to greatness has already been drawn by your ancestors up above. May the wisdom of the guardians of the Zenith illuminate your paths, and may the rhythm of the cosmos guide each of your steps. If this story touched your soul and broadened your perspective, don't let that flame go out. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue receiving the keys to the secrets that official history has tried to hide. Together, we will rescue every fragment of this sacred heritage and restore Africa to its rightful place as humanity's great teacher. See you in the next revelation, under the glow of the same stars that guided our ancestors.